Will the FIA's changes to F1 technical regulations to reduce the possibility of porpoising in 2023 have the desired effect? It's a question that has everyone at Mercedes scratching their heads, as the team struggle with the phenomenon and had to essentially give up on half a season to deal with it, while rivals Red Bull and Ferrari extended the gap. And with the 2023 season just around the corner, many are concerned that the bouncing will bite them again. So as we get closer to the pre-season tests, let's assess the likelihood of that happening and delve deeper into the Silver Arrow's current state. Even before the first launch of the new single-seaters, the 2023 season is proving to be extremely interesting from a technical standpoint, not necessarily because of rumours about specific solutions adopted by teams that could reveal the secrets of their respective projects, but rather because of the car's hypothetical performance this season. We're talking about aerodynamic performance, which will be impacted by the new ride height rules, as well as increased control of the plank and floor flexibility, along with side ground clearance, which should initially have been lower than 2022. In practice, it was assumed that this would result in a loss of downforce load of 12 to 15%, with teams aiming to recover these values by the start of the second half of the season. The reduced downforce values, however, would have contributed even more to the cancellation of the porpoising. This phenomenon is exacerbated by higher loads produced by the floor, which, when combined with low ride heights, causes the underlying flow structure to break up, resulting in the jolts. We learned, somewhat surprisingly, from various aerodynamicists that the initial load values produced will be equivalent to those at the end of 2022. In practice, despite only being in the definition phase of the new car's aerodynamic projects, the teams were able to negate the expected loss of downforce from the implementation of new regulations. Furthermore, it's worth noting that extra downforce points are expected to be obtained early in the development process, i.e. for the first races immediately following the Bahrain tests. In terms of reshuffling the team's pecking order, this is an important fact in the economy of the next championship. In practice, with increased downforce, it is possible that the phenomenon of porpoising will reappear in 2023 cars, despite the regulatory countermeasures. In essence, the cars that were particularly affected by it last season may face the same issue this season, especially if teams maintain the same design features in anticipation of lower aerodynamic loads. This is clearly relevant to Mercedes, where the aerodynamic concept of the W14 appears to differ little from the previous one. Obviously, these are speculative for the time being, but if all the assumptions are true, Mercedes may be in big trouble this season once again. It's a brutal and unforgiving feedback loop. The Silver Arrow's efforts to reduce porpoising in 2022 will benefit them this year as they can run the car lower and stiffer. However, running the car lower and stiffer makes it more susceptible to porpoising, which means the engineers must make a difficult compromise. Do they maximize their chances by designing a car around where they want to run it setup-wise, or do they play it safe in order to avoid their drivers getting a concussion on track but end up going slower than they could have? It's a question we won't know the answer to until after a few races, but all indications point to the fact that porpoising will be more than just a forgotten buzzword in the paddock in 2023. All we know is that if Mercedes falls into the same trap again, they will have effectively squandered their 2022 progress, which team principal Toto Wolff certainly won't want to happen. Mercedes' biggest disadvantage in 2022 was, surprisingly, a lack of experience. Yes, the engineers were aware of porpoising, but when compared to Red Bull's Adrian Newey, who faced the problem firsthand a few decades ago, it's easy to see why one team avoided it almost entirely while the other struggled. Even Wolff admits as much, saying that knowing is one thing, but experiencing is quite another, comparing the experience to a stock market crash. I see analysts and investors in the capital market today who are in their 40s and make the same mistakes as in the 2000s, Wolff explained to the media. It's not enough to read in a book how the stock market crash happened or the internet bubble burst. There is an uncanny advantage, and this is something I personally witnessed to go through the whole cycle, from the moment everything goes through the roof to the crash, coupled with the belief that this is just a snapshot. This is followed by the disillusionment that, unfortunately, it continues. One admits to oneself that the market was simply overheated and valuations too high. Fast forward to this year, this is exactly what happened on the stock markets. Astronomical valuations for internet and tech startups despite a negative macroeconomic environment. While Mercedes has not stated why their W13 was such a diva of a car, as George Russell put it, it has been speculated that everything from the zero pod design to running a stiffer floor than their competitors contributed. Wolff previously stated that the team made the decision to run the car close to the ground in October 2021, but that this only exacerbated their problems. With ground effect aerodynamic cars, the closer the car is to the ground, the greater the downforce. But the greater the downforce, the greater the porpoising. Put to him that Red Bull engineers believe Mercedes has the most downforce of the top teams, but that it's of little use if the car isn't stable, Wolff replied, "I don't know if stable is the right word. We simply need a wider working window. We had a good car on high downforce tracks. We've already seen that in Barcelona. On tracks that have few bumps and no big curves. We need to find a wider aerodynamic window than we had in 2022. We have also seen, just in Brazil, that as soon as we hit our window, we're at the front. Now we have to learn the lessons of why our car is so good on some tracks in certain corners, and on the other hand doesn't work on low downforce tracks like Spa or Monza at high speeds." While Mercedes faces many challenges in their quest to return to the front of the pack, Red Bull believes they are closer than everyone realizes. The Austrian team had a dominant end to 2022, with Max Verstappen winning his second consecutive Drivers' Championship and the team claiming its first Constructors' title since 2013, winning 17 of the 22 races. Verstappen and teammate Sergio Perez won 10 of the final 11 races in 2022, with Red Bull's only defeat coming at the Brazilian Grand Prix, where Mercedes' George Russell won. As the year progressed and Mercedes became more aware of its problems with the W13 car, Russell and teammate Lewis Hamilton began to appear closer to the front of the pack. And although Mercedes' late comeback was not enough to beat Ferrari to second place in the Constructors' Championship, it was enough for Red Bull advisor Helmut Marko to label the team as Red Bull's main threat heading into the new season. "I would say that we should fear Mercedes more," said Marko, "mainly because they have an advantage over Ferrari in terms of strategy and reliability. Ferrari initially looked to set to pose the greatest threat to Red Bull in 2022, winning 2 of the first 3 races, only for its form to tail off in the second half of the season. Engine reliability issues and some strategic errors cost Ferrari opportunities to compete with Red Bull, with the most notable blunder occurring in Hungary when a decision to run hard tyres cost Leclerc a good chance of victory. Ferrari has made a number of changes this winter, including the appointment of Frédéric Vasseur as team principal as it seeks to end its title drought in 2023 amid the possibility of a 3-team fight. Marko, meanwhile, is skeptical that Red Bull's success in 2022 would herald the beginning of a period of dominance comparable to Mercedes when the V6 hybrid power units were introduced in 2014. "Our situation is certainly not like that of Mercedes at the beginning of the hybrid era," said Marko. "We don't have an immense lead with the engine right now, so that is very different. Mercedes had at least 50 brake horsepower margin over all the others back then, and we shouldn't forget, 2022 has been the first year under this new set of regulations. Other teams have obviously seen what we have done with this year's car, so I think it will definitely be much closer next season." So what are your thoughts? Will Mercedes struggle with porpoising once more in 2023, or will they finally be able to compete again for the championship? What about Ferrari? They made a lot of errors in 2022. Will they be stronger this season? Be sure to let us know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking, subscribing, and turning on notifications so that you never miss an upload. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.